Hello, Jack. I have a statistics question for you.
Great. I love statistics.
I have been told to check my assumptions of my statistical analysis with preliminary testing. I have been given a set of rules to follow, but I have seen on the internet that there is a different set of rules to follow. I am confused. What is preliminary testing?
The process of preliminary testing assumptions of a test using the sample data. Before performing the main test, conditional upon the outcome of the preliminary test is common practice.
When is preliminary testing performed?
Assessment of the assumptions to determine the appropriate test can occur either at the design stage or after the data has been collected, in the form of preliminary tests of the assumptions. A researcher could have a plan to perform analysis based on pre-existing knowledge of the assumptions, or they might plan to perform preliminary tests on the assumptions to determine the correct test, or they may have no plan at all.
I am comparing two independent samples, and I have a set of instructions based on a decision tree provided by my lecturer. But in a separate class I have been given a different set of instructions involving preliminary tests of my assumptions. What is going on?
In statistical hypothesis testing, the literature rarely reaches an agreement on the most appropriate analysis strategy for any given scenario.
What should I do?
Before an informed decision can be made as to the most appropriate test, questions regarding the assumptions of the test must be answered. Preliminary tests can be used to answer these questions. However, there are many different tests that could be performed to check the assumptions. To check the normality assumption, for example, the Shapiro-Wilk test or the Kolmogorov-Smirnov test could be performed, among many others.
I understand. So I could choose to do one well-known test for normality, whereas someone else could choose to do an alternative well-known test for normality, so potentially obtaining different conclusions. This doesn't sound good.
Agreed. Because there is no consensus as to the correct method of preliminary analysis, researchers often act in ad hoc, controversial ways, even selecting methods of analysis after the data has been compiled, in order to show the desired conclusion. This has contributed to the reproducibility crisis in the sciences. A related issue is the fact that different software run different tests under the same name. For example, when assessing the assumption of equal variances, SPSS runs Levene's test using deviations from group means, whereas Minitab runs Levene's test using deviations from group medians.
That's really interesting, but does it really matter?
A lack of plan and user apathy as to which statistical tests are being performed is dangerous. Even worse, someone could reverse engineer the software used and statistical test performed in order to achieve the desired conclusion.
So should I do any preliminary hypothesis tests of the assumptions?
You could do, but this involves multiple testing, which increases your chances of type 1 errors. A further complication is the choice of the 5% significance level mostly used in all preliminary tests. The 5% significance level is an arbitrary level, so it is not necessarily the optimal significance level for every application such as preliminary testing.
So shall I just assess the assumptions graphically?
Many textbooks recommend checking the assumptions of normality and equal variances graphically. However, this does not resolve the problem. The decision on which analysis to use is conditioned on the results of this graphical preliminary analysis, just like a formal hypothesis test. The graphical approach also introduces a further element of user subjectivity.
How can we make preliminary testing good?
Solutions that offer the most transparency and forward planning are recommended. This is leading to some disciplines requesting that analysis plans are pre-registered. Considering assumptions at the planning stage, testing using prior data from the same or similar source using theoretical knowledge or reasoning, and addressing the assumptions before the data is collected. All of these things can avoid the issues surrounding preliminary testing.
That has given me a lot to think about. Thank you, Jack.
You're welcome. I love statistics.